Whoops. Hello and welcome to Sage's Tabletop Table Talks. I'm Sage, this is my table, and I'm going to talk to you about tabletop role-playing games. Woo, sorry, I'm a little parched. This is my third episode of Marathon tonight. So, I want to talk about D&D horror stories. So I'll just start with I've talked about this before, but I'll straight up talk about the biggest D&D horror story I've ever had. So I decided to start playing Pathfinder 1st Edition at a game shop. A lot of people in. It was... 3 of the players were my friends. We had a female player who played with us for a while. We had 2 other guys come in and join. One of them stayed... We were friendly for a while. We had other players come and go. We had another female player show up. She played with us for quite a while as well. And, but anyway, one player, he played a bard, and he was such a fucking weird creep. And so we had the one, and she was like 22, 23, but she looked young. She looked like she was like late teens, maybe. And he would get like, when he would sit next to her, he would sit like this with her, even though there was plenty of room at the table. I had to, most of us had to multiple times tell him to give her some space, to scoot over. Hey, you're crowding her. You're getting too close. Come on, man. Give her some space. She's got to have room to roll. She's got to have room to roll the dice. I tried to kick him from the table, but he was friends with the guy who owned the game shop. So, like, I couldn't really kick him from the table. I got my D&D hat on, a D20. But yeah, I couldn't really kick him from the table. But he would just he would constantly hit on the characters, I can't remember what she played now. She might have been a witch. No, that was the other one was a witch. I think she was druid, maybe. Anyway, he was constantly in character hit on her character. And like, it was very clearly done in a way that was implying he was hitting on her too. Because he would make comments about like the druid's appearance that would mimic her appearance. And not what the druid was actually supposed to look like. Like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I thought you were, like, you had this color hair, or whatever. And it was clear he was just hitting on her in proxy. And this character was obsessed with finding a 13 to 15-year-old... His character was, like, in his 30s and late 20s, I think. But he was, because... That's how it was in medieval times. And I had to be like, dude, first of all, no fucking sex in this game. Like, no sex. You guys can have, like, romantic partnerships if you want, but not with a fucking 13-year-old, 18 plus, bitch. And like, but that's realistically how it was back in these times. Like, yeah, well, you have a fucking gnome and a fucking wizard and a fucking Catman ninja, and you're about to go fucking fight a dragon for a sword that shoots lightning? I'm sorry, dude. The idea of realistic has gone out the window fucking as soon as that book was cracked open. There's elves and dwarves and dragons and trolls and goblins and fireballs and staves of lightning and swords that talk to you. My dude... This is not realistic European, this is not a historical story. And even if it was, like, that's the point you're caught up on, kind of fucking gross, dude. Just gonna go out there and say it. And I'm gonna fucking call you out too, George R.R. Martin. Fucking weird you're putting that in your stories. Your fucking books have dragons and zombies in it. You don't need to talk about sex with women who've just hit their period. That's fucking weird. Yeah, fucking weird. But you play GURPS, so... yeah, like, I get it now. Made that connection in my head. Like, guys who play GURPS are weird. That's not universally true. It's a joke. I hate GURPS, but it's just a fucking joke. So, anyway... But this dude, and like, us eventually got to the point where we just stopped playing at the shop. The other female player we had let us play at her house on those nights. And it lasted a couple weeks after that, but it just got to the point where it just kind of got too difficult to schedule everybody's time together. I had just switched jobs. I had a friend who just switched jobs. And it was just became a scheduling nightmare. So the campaign fell apart there because adulthood sucks. But yeah, like, and so that's the biggest horror story I have. The biggest horror story I have that I did, and to my friend David, once again, I fucking apologize. Even the rest of the party who did this, I was the catalyst that started this. This is 100% I'm the asshole. Where he was running a campaign, and I felt like I've said this before, I felt like the way he was I felt like, because I was playing a diviner, I felt like he was circumventing what I was trying to do. Realistically, it was a difference in the interpretation of how the spells worked. And I was getting bored and irritated because of it. And instead of sitting down and having an adult talk, like a fucking adult, we were in a church and we were investigating this possible, like, cult corrupting a church. And instead of actually investigating this, after a couple of minutes, I just set fire to the church and burnt it to the ground and basically ruined his campaign. And I'm fucking sorry. And I mean that sincerely. I am sorry I did that. And it was completely on me. I acknowledge that what I did was the dick move. So there we go. There's my end. I think that sharing personal stories work. And obviously, here's one of the things. I'm going to get to the point of the matter. I talk about the one guy who made the one female player uncomfortable. And she mentioned that he was making her uncomfortable. However, if he were to tell that story, he would probably tell it in a different way. That he was role-playing a character, that everybody at the table was laughing. His jokes were fun. He made funny jokes. He did make funny jokes, and we laughed at some of the jokes he made. That he might tell the story that, I was just out telling jokes, and everybody laughed, but the DM was mad. And he might even tell the DM had a crush on this girl, and he was just mad that me and her were flirting with each other, and so he started to, hinder my character, and he started telling me I couldn't do things that other players were allowed to do. Things like that. And so the way he would tell the story, like if we were telling these stories on Reddit, he would paint me as a jealous asshole who was pissed off that this, female player was spending more attention on him than she was to me. Whereas the way I see it is, he was a creepy asshole who was making players uncomfortable. And like I said, she came to me and told me that he was making her uncomfortable. Once again, you only have my word for it. I can tell you, but, you can decide not to believe me if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I'm not posting this on Reddit for karma or anything like that. I'm just explaining the story because it puts some context into things. But like I said, once again, you could just be like, oh, he's lying. The same way if, like I said, if he were to post this story on Reddit, I absolutely would be like, dude, you're lying, but it is just his word against mine. So yeah, you don't, like I don't give a shit. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to believe me. I really don't care that much if you don't believe me. Whatever. But it kind of brings me to the crux of it. So, there's a couple, and I listen to them sometimes. Crispy's Tavern Tales, Crit Crab, and, D&D Doge all do D&D horror stories, where they read and then do commentary on horror stories of people playing Dungeons & Dragons they post on Reddit. Another one I actually listen to more than any of them, and I like him for this reason, is Den of the Drake. And if you're interested in D&D horror story content, please, by all means, I'm not telling you not to watch these guys. I just want to make something aware if you are watching them. And that is to treat every story spoken in there with cynicism. do not take these stories as word of God, because they're not. And I like Den of the Drake because Den of the Drake, he's got a reputation of being a wild card. Because he will absolutely call out OP if something seems weird. So now, actually, it's kind of funny because I decided I was going to do this topic, and I was watching D&D Doge, and he was doing D&D horror stories, and he read a story about this DM who was upset that this player ghosted him. He was, running, and they were doing like session 0, and the guy created a backstory, and then the DM was like, okay, but I think you should change this. Okay, I think you should change this. You should change this. I think you should change this. It would work better if you... And, like, made numerous changes and was like, the changes I made in his post, the changes I made were only suggestions. Like, he could have said vetoed them, and, like, yeah, okay, but, like, as a DM, you have to be aware you are a player, but you do hold a certain level of authority over other players. Especially if these other players are newer, or if you're playing with a group of strangers. If you're playing with, like, strangers, new people online, it's kind of a DM's responsibility to be, like, the center peg of that social interaction. So, saying, I suggested he made those changes is the same way your supervisor suggests you do a task at a job. Yeah, you can say no, and you may not even come up to any repercussion for saying no. But there's a level of authority that makes this suggestion come off more like an order than it does like a actual suggestion. And I, once again, like him, but I have to make this comment. And he's like, I don't think the DM did anything wrong. I think that and I'm like, no, dude, there's some fucking... If he made that many changes to a character's backstory, there's some fucking red flags there that need to be addressed. Like, even if they were just suggestions to make it better, if you're making more than like 1 or 2 active changes to a character's... Now, obviously, players might come to a DM and ask questions. There could be a dialogue, but if you're asking them to make more than maybe 3 changes, you're not letting that player play that character. You're pushing them into a role that you want them to be in. Obviously, there are, like, Session 0 no-goes that don't apply. For example, if a character decides that he wants to be a kleptomaniac, that's just a straight no-go. You're not asking to change character. You're like, no, this is disruptive. But if it's like, oh, my character, my mother was a knight of, this order, and you're like, would it be better if your father was the knight of the order? Because it's more likely a male would be a knight. Well, no, maybe part of my character is that his mother was exceptional, and maybe part of what made him who he was the way that the other children treated him for having a mother who was in this non-conventional role. But, as the DM, you're asking him to make a change because you don't like that bit, and you're getting to the point where you're just writing their backstory for them. So, no, that fucking DM didn't do nothing wrong. He absolutely, we're only hearing his side of the story. So when you tell that side of the story, you are obviously going to paint yourself in the most positive light you can. I'm not even saying you lie. What I'm saying is that you frame the story you're making to make it seem like you are in the most positive light you can within that story. Okay, cool, great, but what does the other guy have to say? What were his thoughts and feelings? You're only getting half the story. And that is the biggest problem with the D&D horror stories is you are literally just getting half the story. You are getting the very sugar-coated, rosy version of the story that the poster wants to tell you. Den of the Drake did one where a guy was talking about how he sat down at a convention and this player came down and he was doing all the, historic blah, 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 and the OP was saying about how he told this guy off and wandered off, and he's a historical reenactor, and instead of playing D&D, all these people who paid at the convention to join his table, instead of wanting to play, wanted to hear his stories about historical reenactment. And Den of the Drake was the exact thought I had, which was, bullshit. This is a lie. This is just a fucking lie for karma. This is karma farming. It did not happen. It never happened. And thank you for calling them out on that, Den of the Drake. And that is one of the reasons I respect you so much. And I hear these stories being told, not just among the r/ D&D horror story creators, but all these people about player characters they've had and the things they've done. And so often my thought is, really? Is that really what happened? Are you embellishing? Or are you lying? Are you just lying? Hey, maybe that bard I had who made that female player uncomfortable never existed. You don't know. I could just be making that shit up just to fucking, tell the story and to make points. Who the fuck knows? You don't know. And that's kind of the point, is when somebody talks about these horror stories, you only have my word to verify this information. So obviously, and maybe in my head, his actions were worse than they were in real life. And maybe the other people who were there could verify, deny, whatever. I don't even give a fuck. But I am making the point that you only have my word to decide on this. And so often these guys are like, I can't believe that guy did that. You know what? I can't believe it either. I find it very hard to believe that this went down the way everybody says it went down. So when you listen to these stories, kind of do so with a critical ear and think about, wait, something seems off. That seems weird that's how that interaction went down. And there's another minor problem with it, and that is, honestly, it just really paints the hobby in the most negative light possible. I think that I would love to have people tell more epic stories within Dungeons & Dragons. Stories of triumph, stories of friendship, stories of, heroism and, camaraderie and things like that. And so I can tell you, I love, and my we were playing an Everon campaign. My friend was DMing, and I love this dude. I'm like, I don't know, but he at one point was there's nothing happened between us. We just kind of grew apart. Just an amazing dude. I love this dude, and he was playing this character. He was this insane, fucking stupid, min-maxed, fucking had 5 fucking classes. But we had this whiteboard, right? And he would just draw while we were doing stuff. We just scribble pictures of our characters, and he scribbled this picture of his character because he had just gained his whirling dervish training. And he's like, I don't have a lot of downtime to learn this skill. So the idea was he went through this insane training montage and drew a picture of all of us getting this new airship, which was called the Emerald Dream or something. But because my character was captain of it and I like goofy characters, would refer to it as okay, let's get on the truck. It's not a truck, it's an airship. All right, let's get on the plane. It's not an airplane, it's an airship. It's no, fuck it. So he drew a picture of me laughing at the old captain with the word Emerald Dream painted over with truck plane, because I officially renamed the ship the truck plane, so I could say let's get to the truck or get to the plane without being wrong. And his character's on his arms dragging himself with a trail of blood coming from his knees from his master constantly smacking him to get his footwork right. But he would just draw these little fucking cute pictures of what the dumb jokes we made of our party. And we all would just laugh, and it was so fun. And I guess I can't speak for everyone, but nobody felt like they were offended by these dumb little pictures, these cute little fucking comic strips he would write on our... Because like I said, it was kind of like this. but it was huge. It took up the whole table, and we scored it. So it made a hex grid. We scored it 1 inch by 1 inch, made a hex grid out of it. But like while we were just kind of chatting or doing whatever, he would just kind of scribble these pictures, and I will always have those memories of my character. So I had a different campaign, a half orc who was Arthur Pendragon. That wasn't Pendragon. So Arthur something / his orc side was Grog Hamfist, and so like almost like a dual personality. And I had a horse because I was a knight, and we were talking about like riding the knight into battle, but also having it pull a cart. So we were buying a monkey in order to have it unbuckle things. And if you ever, and it's a running joke now within like our group of the few of us that are still left, the buckle monkey, and curse you, buckle monkey, where we made this joke that this monkey would unbuckle the cart, but because it was obsessed with buckles, it would unbuckle our pants as well. So we would just be like, suddenly our pants would fall down, and we'd be like, curse you, buckle monkey. He drew like this little comic of my character Grog. It had just like one orc tooth because, of course he did. It was funny. And like, okay, so buckle monkeys. And he'd be, trying to decide if he wanted to buy buckle monkeys. And there was a couple one, like there was a giant radioactive monkey, because giant radioactive monkey was like a dumb joke I had that I was obsessed with for a short period of time. And at one point, it was normal monkeys. And the idea that somebody would sell a monkey without a gimmick enraged him so much, he cut the dude's head off and took over his stand. And I was like, should Grog embezzle? Because, like, he was just going to take his own monkeys. And so memories like that, as a D&D player, are ones that I will hold on to forever. So when you listen to these D&D horror stories, don't think it's all creeps being weird against girls and guys pushing their fetishes on things and people creating fucking boring OC anime do not steal Sasuke characters, or people throwing rage fits and flipping tables, because that happens, but that's not most of us. That's not the majority of what happens at these tables. It's not all weird homophobia. It's not all people getting mad that wheelchairs exist in Dungeons & Dragons. They're very loud, but a very small part of our community. Much of our community is built around camaraderie and shared experiences and inside jokes that we all laugh at. It's so funny, and we all enjoy it, and fucking 15 years. Trying to think. Yeah, probably 15 years. 15 years. I still remember the picture my friend drew of an airship and my character laughing because he repainted it the truck plane. And I will hold on to that memory for many, many years to come. I will hold on to the memories of my friend running a campaign, and then we did like almost there was a tank, and we couldn't damage a tank. Nothing we could do to damage a tank. So I'm like, okay, I have an idea. So my friend threw me up, and I fired a heat beam down the barrel of this tank. And I rolled a critical success. Like, okay, this is it. I got one shot. And he's like, my friend was like, yeah, you blow up the tank. And like, he had no plan for what he was going to do. He improvised, but like, that epic success, like, dude, we won an unwinnable battle. Like, felt good. So, it's epic successes. It's funny stories. It's stories about the truck plane and the buckle monkey. And, we even made a joke about how, like, at one point, that BBEG would be standing there on his epic speech, and all of a sudden his pants would fall down, and that would be the ending of... It never got that far, but that would be the ending of the campaign. Because curse you, buckle monkey, and fall down a pit. And that was funny. Like, that is, so if you're looking to get, if you and your friends want to get together to play this, remember that it's not all racism and sexism. It's a lot of just inside jokes and laughing and holding on to memories of friends you haven't talked to in 10 years, but remembering 15 years ago how hard they made you laugh with this thing that will stay with you forever. So when you listen to D&D horror stories, just take it with a grain of salt. Think about it with a little bit of cynicism. And that's perfectly, and if you do that, that is a perfectly fine way to enjoy that kind of content. But do not think that that is reality. That is how this actually is. There's a lot of embellishment and a lot of lying. And these are simply, out of 100 stories, the worst 3. Because they're not posting stories about fucking Grog's monkeys on D&D horror stories. That doesn't go on D&D horror stories. And if you guys want, I can try and speak with my friends about some of the absolutely hilarious stories we have from the games that we played. If that's something you want, just leave it in the comments. I'm more than willing to just tell positive stories. I've told most of the horror stories I have, like, probably a couple more, but, like, I've mostly played with friends, a couple online, and met some weirdos there, but mostly played with friends. Anyway, so yeah, I will see you guys next time. I don't know what my next topic's gonna be, but we'll play it by ear and just kind of see how it goes. So have fun, everyone. Bye.